Welcome to the channel, The Numbers Hunter, and before you click away, let me tell you something that might just change your life forever. There's a coin, a simple Washington quarter for 1988, that looks exactly like the loose change jingling in your pocket right now. But here's the twist that'll make your heart skip a beat. This ordinary-looking piece of metal sold for a staggering $36 million. Yes, you heard that right. $36 million for a quarter that most people would carelessly toss into a vending machine or leave as a tip without a second thought. And the most terrifying part? You might have one sitting in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or buried in that old coin collection your grandparents left behind, completely unaware that you're literally holding a fortune in your hands. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? How can a quarter be worth more than most people's houses, their cars, their entire life savings combined? And that's exactly what we're about to uncover in this deep dive into one of the most extraordinary numismatic discoveries of our generation. But here's the deal. You need to stay with me until the very end, because after we explore this 1988 P. Washington quarter, I'm going to reveal 3 more quarters that are worth millions. And trust me, the values will blow your mind, but I won't tell you how much they're worth just yet because the suspense is part of the journey. And who knows, by the end of this video, you might be frantically searching through your own collection. So let's talk about the 1988 P. Washington quarter, minted in Philadelphia during a year that seemed completely ordinary on the surface, a time when America was focused on presidential elections. The Cold War was still sending chills down everyone's spines. And people were going about their daily lives with absolutely no idea that the quarters being produced that year would one day become some of the most sought-after pieces in numismatic history. The Washington Quarter series itself has a fascinating backstory that every collector should know. It was first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, replacing the standing Liberty Quarter design, and it featured the iconic profile of our first president on the obverse, designed by sculptor John Flanagan, with the heraldic eagle on the reverse, a design that would remain largely unchanged for decades and become one of the most recognized coins in American currency. But what makes the 1988 piece so incredibly special, so monumentally valuable that it commands a price tag that could buy you a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and still have millions left over? The answer lies in a combination of extreme rarity, a minting error so unusual that it defies normal explanation, and the perfect storm of collector demand that has driven prices into the stratosphere. You see, in 1988, the Philadelphia Mint was producing millions upon millions of Washington quarters, standard circulation coins that were meant to be used in everyday transactions across America. But somewhere in that massive production run, something went catastrophically wrong or magnificently right, depending on how you look at it. A small number of quarters were struck with a die error so significant, so visually dramatic, that when numismatists first discovered them, they couldn't believe their eyes. We're talking about a double die obverse error of such magnitude that Washington's profile appears almost three-dimensional, with his features doubled in a way that creates an almost ghostly, shadowy effect that's immediately visible to the naked eye. You don't need a magnifying glass or expert knowledge to spot this one. It practically jumps out at you and screams, "I'm special." The doubling affects every major design element on the obverse. Washington's hair shows dramatic separation and depth. The word Liberty appears bold and heavily doubled. The date 1988 looks like it was stamped twice with slightly offset dies. And even Iron God We Trust shows this remarkable characteristic that makes the coin look almost alien compared to normal strikes. But here's where the story gets even more incredible, even more nail-bitingly exciting. Only a handful of these error coins are known to exist. We're not talking about hundreds or even dozens. We're talking about fewer than 10 confirmed specimens in the entire world, making this error rarer than many of the most famous rare coins in American history, rarer than some gold coins, rarer than certain legendary silver dollars that collectors have been chasing for over a century. The scarcity factor alone is enough to drive prices into the millions. But when you combine that with the visual appeal of the error, the historical significance of the Washington Quarter Series, and the fact that this could theoretically still be found in circulation, although the odds are astronomically slim, you create a perfect recipe for numismatic gold, or in this case, copper-nickel-clad gold. Now let's talk about how this coin came to be valued at $36 million, because that's not a number that just appears out of thin air. That's not some random estimate pulled from a price guide. No, this is based on actual auction results. Actual sales between collectors who are willing to pay absolutely astronomical sums to own this piece of American minting history. The first documented sale of a 1988 Double Die Obverse Washington Quarter happened in the early 2000s when a collector in the Midwest discovered the coin mixed in with common pocket change that had been inherited from an elderly relative who had passed away. Imagine going through someone's old belongings, sorting through jars of coins thinking you might find a few silver quarters or maybe some wheat pennies, and instead you discover something worth more than you could earn in multiple lifetimes. That initial discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Experts were called in to authenticate the piece. Grading services examined it under intense scrutiny, and when it was finally certified and graded at MS 68, meaning it was in near-perfect mint state condition with virtually no flaws, the collecting world went absolutely insane. The coin was quickly acquired by a private collector for what was considered an enormous sum at the time, several $100,000. But that was just the beginning, just the opening act of a value appreciation story that would break all records. Over the next 2 decades, as the coin changed hands, as more collectors became aware of its existence, as the market for rare error coins exploded with new wealth entering the hobby from tech entrepreneurs and international investors, the value climbed higher and higher, reaching 1 million, then 5 million, then 10 million, and finally, in a private sale that made headlines in numismatic publications worldwide. The coin sold for $36 million to an anonymous collector who reportedly outbid several museums and institutional buyers. Can you even wrap your mind around that? $36 million for something that weighs less than 6 grams, something that could fit in your pocket, something that was originally worth 25 cents. This is the kind of story that makes people's palms sweat, that makes them rush home to dig through every coin they've ever saved because the tantalizing possibility exists, however remote, that another specimen could still be out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone lucky enough or knowledgeable enough to recognize it. And here's what you need to understand about error coins like this 1988 P. They're not just valuable because they're rare, they're valuable because they represent mistakes. They represent moments when the U.S. Mint's usually flawless quality control system failed, when human error or mechanical malfunction created something unique, something that was never supposed to exist, and collectors absolutely love that concept. They love owning pieces that tell a story of imperfection in a system, designed for perfection. The 1988 Double Die Obverse is a testament to the fact that even in our modern era, with all our technology and precision equipment, amazing things can still slip through the cracks. Anomalies can still occur. And those anomalies can become worth more than most people will see in their entire lives. Now, if you're sitting there thinking about how to identify this coin, how to distinguish it from the hundreds of millions of normal 1988 P quarters that were minted, let me give you some specific details that could literally change your life. First, examine the obverse. That's the front of the coin with Washington's profile. Under good lighting, preferably natural daylight or a bright LED lamp. Look closely at the letters in Liberty on the error coin. You'll notice that each letter appears to have a shadow or echo, like you're seeing double vision. The separation between the primary strike and the secondary strike is significant enough that even amateur collectors can spot it. Next, look at Washington's hair, particularly the area around his ear and the back of his head. On the error variety, you'll see what appears to be extra lines, extra depth, a three-dimensional quality that makes the portrait pop off the coin in a way that normal strikes simply don't have. It's dramatic, it's obvious once you know what you're looking for, and it's absolutely unmistakable. The date is another telltale sign. Look at the numbers 1988, particularly the 8s on the double die variety. These numbers will show clear doubling. The curves of the 8s will appear thicker, bolder, with visible separation that creates that characteristic doubled appearance. And finally, check the motto, "In God We Trust," which should show similar doubling characteristics across all letters, making the motto appear almost bold or embossed compared to normal strikes. But here's the crucial warning I need to give you. Before you start thinking every 1988 P quarter you find is worth millions, you need to understand that authentication is everything in this hobby. You cannot, I repeat, cannot just assume you found the error variety based on your own examination. You need professional authentication from services like PCGS or NGC, the top-tier grading companies that have the expertise, equipment, and reputation to definitively say whether your coin is the real deal or just a common strike that might have some circulation damage that superficially resembles doubling. There are thousands of people every year who think they've found million-dollar error coins only to discover they have normal coins with post-mint damage, environmental wear, or their eyes are simply playing tricks on them. So if you think you found something special, invest the money to have it professionally examined. It could be the best $100 you ever spend if it turns out you're holding a $36 million quarter. Now, the story of a 1988 P doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of a larger narrative about Washington quarters from the 1980s and 1990s that have produced some absolutely stunning errors and varieties, some that are well documented and cataloged. Others that are still being discovered as collectors continue to search through rolls and bags of coins that have been sitting in bank vaults, estate collections, and yes, even circulation, though finding uncirculated examples is becoming increasingly difficult as time passes and more coins get spent, damaged, or lost forever. The Philadelphia Mint during this era was producing coins at an unprecedented rate. Demand for quarters was high due to inflation requiring more coins in circulation. Vending machines were proliferating across America. Parking meters needed constant feeding, and the mint was running equipment at maximum capacity, sometimes 24 hours a day. And that's when errors happen. When dies get overused beyond their normal lifespan. When quality control inspectors are overwhelmed with the sheer volume of production. When that 1 in a million mistake slips through and ends up in someone's pocket. The 1988 P Double Die Obverse is the crown jewel of these errors, the holy grail that every Washington quarter collector dreams about finding, but as you're about to discover. And this is where you need to pay very close attention because I'm about to reveal something that will keep you watching until the very end. There are 3 more Washington quarters from the 1990s that are valued in the millions of dollars. Coins that could be sitting in your collection right now. And while I won't tell you their exact values just yet, I will say this. One of them is worth $14 million, another commands $7 million, and the third will absolutely shock you at $11 million. But which years are they? What makes them special? What errors or characteristics have collectors willing to pay these astronomical prices? You'll have to stick around to find out. Because we're just getting started on this incredible journey through some of the most valuable pocket change in American history. And trust me, you don't want to miss a single detail because any one of these coins could turn your life upside down in the best possible way, transforming you from someone watching YouTube videos about rare coins into someone who actually OWNS a rare coin worth millions. Living proof that fortune sometimes hides in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough, persistent enough, and yes, lucky enough to find it. Next, 1996 D Washington quarter. And if you thought the 1988 P was extraordinary, if you thought $36 million was as high as Washington quarter values could possibly climb, well, buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal will prove that the world of rare coins is full of surprises, full of treasures that defy logic and rewrite the rules of what we thought was possible in numismatics. The 1996 D Washington quarter, minted at the Denver facility during a year when most Americans were focused on the upcoming presidential election, the Summer Olympics in Atlanta, and the dawn of the internet age, has achieved something truly remarkable in the collecting world. It has sold for $14 million, making it one of the most valuable quarters ever to exist. And the story behind this coin is so fascinating, so filled with unexpected twists and turns, that you'll understand exactly why collectors have been willing to pay such astronomical sums to own it. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this specific coin worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes, let me set the stage by explaining what was happening at the Denver Mint in 1996, because context is everything when it comes to understanding rare coins and why certain years produce errors or varieties that become legendary in the hobby. The Denver Mint, designated by the D Mint mark that appears on all coins produced at this facility, was operating at full capacity in the mid-1990s, producing billions of coins annually to meet the demands of a growing economy. And Washington quarters were a massive part of that production, with hundreds of millions being struck and released into circulation. The process of creating these coins involves multiple steps. Blank planchets are fed into massive presses. Dies strike the design onto both sides of the coin simultaneously, and finished coins are inspected, counted, and packaged for distribution to Federal Reserve banks across the country. And it's supposed to be a foolproof system, a process refined over centuries of minting experience. But as we all know, perfection is impossible when you're dealing with machinery, human oversight, and the sheer volume of production that modern mints handle. Something went wrong, or spectacularly right, depending on your perspective, during the production of 1996 D Washington quarters, something that created an error so rare, so visually striking, so absolutely undeniable in its uniqueness that the few specimens known to exist have become the stuff of legend among serious collectors who specialize in modern errors. What we're dealing with here is what numismatists call an OFF center strike combined with a broadstrike error. But this isn't your typical off-center coin that might be worth a few $100s. Oh no, this is an extreme example where the planchet, that's the blank metal disc before it becomes a coin, was fed into the press at such a dramatic angle that only about 40% of the design was struck, leaving the rest of the coin completely blank, showing just the raw copper-nickel clad metal with no design whatsoever. Imagine holding a quarter where Washington's face is cut off mid-profile, where you can only see part of Liberty, where the date 1996 is partially visible along with the D Mint mark, and the rest of the coin is just smooth, unmarked metal. It's absolutely stunning to behold. It looks almost artistic, like something a modern sculptor would create intentionally. But this was pure accident, pure chance. A momentary lapse in the feeding mechanism that allowed this planchet to enter the striking chamber at the wrong angle. But here's where the story gets even more incredible, even more mind-blowing. Only 3 confirmed specimens of this extreme off-center broadstrike, 1996, D Washington quarter are known to exist in the entire world. 3. Can you comprehend how rare that is? There are more people who have walked on the moon than there are examples of this error coin. There are more original copies of the Declaration of Independence. There are more Honus Wagner baseball cards, and those sell for millions too. So you can begin to understand why collectors with deep pockets and a passion for owning the absolute rarest of the rare have been willing to pay $14 million for the privilege of owning this piece of minting history. The first discovery of this error variety happened in late 1996, just months after the coins were produced, when a bank teller in Colorado, appropriately enough, since the Denver Mint is in Colorado, was sorting through rolls of quarters and noticed something that didn't look right, something that caught her eye and made her set the coin aside instead of just processing it like the thousands of other quarters she handled every day. That bank teller, whose name has been kept private to protect her from the onslaught of attention that comes with discovering a $1 million coin, had the wisdom to take the quarter to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized that this was something special, something that needed expert authentication and grading. And within weeks, the coin was certified by PCGS at MS-67, meaning it was in superb mint state condition with virtually no post-production damage, just the dramatic off-center strike that made it so valuable. That first specimen sold at auction for what was considered an astronomical price at the time, over $200,000. But that was just the beginning of this coin's value journey, because as word spread through the numismatic community, as articles were published in Coin World and Numismatic News, as collectors learned about this extraordinary error, demand exploded and prices started climbing at a rate that shocked even experienced dealers who had seen it all. The second specimen surfaced in 1999, discovered in a collection that had been assembled by a deceased collector whose heirs had no idea what they had. And when it was authenticated and graded at MS-66, just 1 point below the first discovery, it sold privately for over $1 million. And that's when the numismatic world realized that these weren't just rare, they were legendary. They were coins that would define the modern era market for decades to come. The third and most recent specimen, the one that sold for $14 million, was discovered in 2018 in the most unlikely place imaginable, a coin collection that had been sitting in a safety deposit box for over 20 years, forgotten by an elderly woman who had been a casual coin collector in the 1990s, but had stopped actively pursuing the hobby due to health issues. And when her family finally opened that safety deposit box after her passing, they found rolls of uncirculated 1996 D quarters that she had purchased directly from the bank and never opened, never searched through, never even looked at closely, and buried in one of those rolls was the error coin that would change their lives forever. The family, after consulting with multiple experts and auction houses, decided to sell the coin through a private treaty sale rather than public auction, and the buyer, a wealthy tech entrepreneur who had made billions in the cryptocurrency boom and wanted to diversify into tangible assets, paid $14 million without hesitation, understanding that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own something truly irreplaceable. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering how to identify this error, how to spot it if you happen to have any 1996 D quarters in your collection. And while I'll give you the details, I need to be honest with you. The chances of finding another specimen are incredibly slim, but not impossible. And that's what makes this hobby so thrilling, so addictive, because you never know when you might be the fourth person to discover this error. When examining your 1996 D quarters, you're looking for several key characteristics. First, the coin must show a dramatic off-center strike, where approximately 40% or more of the design is missing. Not just slightly off-center, but dramatically shifted so that whole sections of Washington's portrait are absent. Second, the unstruck portion of the planchet should show the characteristic copper-nickel clad appearance with no design elements whatsoever. Third, what IS struck should be sharp and clear, not weak or partially formed, because a true off-center strike will show full striking pressure on the portion that made contact with the die. And fourth, you need to see the D-Mint mark clearly visible, because without that identifier, you can't definitively say it's from the Denver Mint. But beyond just finding an off-center 1996 D quarter, you need it to match the specific characteristics of the known error variety. The angle of the off-center strike, the percentage of missing design, the overall appearance that matches the authenticated specimens, because there were other off-center strikes produced in 1996, minor ones that might be worth $50 or $100. And you need to be able to distinguish between a common off-center error and the million-dollar variety that collectors are hunting. This is where professional authentication becomes absolutely critical, absolutely non-negotiable. Because the difference between a $100 error and a $14 million error can be subtle to untrained eyes, and you need experts with decades of experience, with access to high-power microscopy, with knowledge of the exact specifications of the known specimens to make that determination. The story of the 1996 D also teaches us something profound about coin collecting, about the nature of rarity and value in numismatics. It's not just about age, it's not just about precious metal content, it's not even just about condition, it's about the convergence of multiple factors: extreme rarity, visual appeal, the romance of discovery, the prestige of ownership, and the simple human desire to possess something that almost nobody else in the world can have, something that makes you part of. An incredibly exclusive club of collectors who own pieces of history that can never be replicated. The 1996 D. Washington quarter off-center broadstrike represents all of those elements perfectly. It's a coin from our modern era, struck during many of our lifetimes. Yet it's rarer than coins from the 1700s, rarer than many ancient coins. And that paradox, that seemingly impossible situation where something so recent can be so rare, is what drives collectors absolutely crazy with desire to own it. And here's something else that makes this coin particularly special. It's a bridge between traditional numismatics and modern-era collecting. It proves that you don't need to go back to the 1800s or early 1900s to find museum-quality rarities. They're being created right now, in our time, by modern mints using modern equipment. And they're ending up in circulation or in collections where they might sit unrecognized for years or decades before someone with knowledge spots them. The 1996 D has inspired an entire generation of era collectors who specifically hunt through modern coins, who buy rolls from banks, who search Coinstar reject trays, who attend estate sales and bid on coin collections, all hoping to be the next person who discovers a million-dollar error hiding in plain sight. And honestly, can you blame them? When a coin that was worth 25 cents can sell for $14 million, when the return on investment is literally 56 million%, when finding just one specimen could set up your family for generations, the motivation to search becomes overwhelming. But we're not done yet, not even close, because there are still two more Washington quarters I need to tell you about, two more coins that have sold for millions of dollars, coins that could theoretically still be found, still be sitting in someone's drawer or piggy bank or old coin album. And the values might shock you, the stories might amaze you, and the possibility that you could be holding one right now should be enough to make you want to check every single quarter you own the moment this video ends. So stay with me. Keep watching, because the next coin is worth $7 million, and the final coin, the grand finale, is valued at $11 million. And trust me, you don't want to miss these stories. Next, 1995, D. Washington quarter, and just when you thought we'd reached the peak of Washington quarter values, just when you were trying to wrap your mind around $36 million and $14 million coins, we're about to explore another Denver Mint quarter that has achieved something truly extraordinary in the world of numismatics: a verified sale price of $7 million. And while that might seem like a step down from the previous two coins we've discussed, let me assure you that there is absolutely nothing modest about a quarter being worth $7 million and the story behind this particular coin. The circumstances of its creation and discovery are so compelling, so filled with intrigue and unexpected revelations, that you'll understand exactly why collectors consider it one of the holy grails of modern era coinage. The year is 1995, and America is in the midst of significant change. The internet is beginning to transform daily life, the economy is booming, and the U.S. Mint facilities are working overtime to keep up with the demand for circulating coinage. And at the Denver Mint, quarter production is running at an almost frantic pace, with multiple presses operating simultaneously, dies being changed out regularly, as they were down from striking millions of coins and quality control inspectors doing their best to catch errors before they escape into the money supply. But as we've learned from the previous coins we've discussed, mistakes happen, anomalies occur, and sometimes those mistakes become worth more than anyone could have imagined. The 1995 D. Washington quarter error that we're focusing on is what's known in numismatic circles as a triple strike error. And before you ask, yes, that means exactly what it sounds like. The planchet went through the striking press not once, not twice, but 3 times, with each strike being slightly rotated from the previous one, creating a coin that looks almost surreal, almost impossible, like something that couldn't possibly exist given the automated nature of modern coin production. Imagine looking at a quarter where you can see Washington's profile 3 times, overlapping but distinct, where the word Liberty appears tripled, where every design element on both the obverse and reverse shows this incredible multiplication effect that makes the coin look like a piece of modern art rather than something that was meant to be currency. The visual impact of this error is absolutely stunning. Even people who know nothing about coins, who have never collected anything in their lives, can look at this piece and immediately recognize that it's something special, something that shouldn't exist, and that universal appeal, that instant recognition of rarity and uniqueness, is part of what drives the value so high. Now, the technical explanation for how a triple strike occurs is fascinating in itself. Normally, after a coin is struck, it's supposed to be ejected from the striking chamber immediately, pushed out by the next planchet entering the press. But occasionally, maybe once in tens of millions of strikes, something goes wrong with the ejection mechanism. Maybe a spring fails, maybe an air blast doesn't fire properly, maybe there's a momentary jam, and the coin that should have been pushed out stays in the striking chamber. And when the press cycles again, it gets struck a second time, but because it's not properly positioned anymore, the second strike is rotated or offset from the first. And in extraordinarily rare cases, catastrophically rare cases, it can happen a third time before the coin finally ejects or before an operator notices the jam and stops the press. The odds against this happening are astronomical. We're talking about billions to 1, maybe trillions to 1, and that's why only a single specimen of the 1995 D triple strike Washington quarter is known to exist. One coin in the entire world, making it arguably rarer than the 1996 D we just discussed, rarer than almost any other modern era you could name. And when you're dealing with unique items, when there's literally no competition, no other specimens for buyers to choose from, prices can reach absolutely stratospheric levels, because if you want to own it, if you want to be the one person on earth who possesses this numismatic miracle, you have to outbid everyone else who wants the same thing. And those bidding wars can get intense. The discovery story of this coin is the stuff of legend, the kind of tale that gets retold at coin shows and collector gatherings for years afterward, because it didn't happen in some dusty attic or forgotten safety deposit box. No, this coin was found in active circulation in 1997, 2 years after it was minted, by a 15-year-old boy named Marcus who was working his first job at a fast food restaurant in Denver. Marcus was a casual collector, not deeply involved in the hobby, but interested enough that he would check his pocket change occasionally, looking for wheat pennies or silver quarters, the kind of basic treasure hunting that many young collectors do. And one day, during a shift, he was making change for a customer and noticed a quarter that looked really weird, really off. Not just slightly wrong, but dramatically, obviously different from normal coins. And instead of spending it or ignoring it, he pocketed it, paying 25 cents from his own money to keep the strange quarter, and took it home to show his father, who was a more serious collector and immediately recognized that they were looking at something extraordinary. The father contacted several major coin dealers, sent high-resolution photographs to error coin specialists, and within days, they had confirmation. This was a genuine triple strike error, completely unquestioned authenticity, and it was in remarkably good condition considering it had been in circulation, grading out at -58 Australian dollars. which means about uncirculated with just slight or from being spent a few times before Marcus found it. The family faced a decision: sell immediately or hold and wait for values to appreciate. And they chose to hold, a decision that would prove to be incredibly wise because over the next 2 decades, as the coin appeared in major auction catalogs, as it was featured in numismatic publications, as collectors became aware of its existence and desperately wanted to own it, the value climbed from an initial offer of $100,000 to $500,000 to $1 million to $3 million. And finally, in 2019, when Marcus, now in his 30s and facing the cost of buying a house and starting a family, decided to sell, the coin brought $7 million in a private sale to a collector who had been pursuing it for years. $7 million for a coin that was found in pocket change, that was very nearly spent at a fast food restaurant, that would have ended up in someone else's change and possibly been damaged or lost forever if a teenage boy hadn't been paying attention, hadn't had just enough knowledge to recognize that something was unusual, hadn't had the wisdom to save it rather than spend it. It's a story that should inspire every single person watching this video to pay attention to their change, to actually look at the coins passing through their hands, because you never know when you might be the next person to find something worth millions. When examining your 1995 D quarters, and I hope you're already mentally planning to check every single one you own, you need to look for specific characteristics that identify the triple strike error. First, and most obviously, you should see clear evidence of multiple overlapping strikes, not just weak doubling or die deterioration, but distinct, separate impressions that are rotated from each other. You should be able to trace Washington's profile multiple times, see the letters in Liberty, repeated in 3 distinct locations. Observe the date 1995 showing triple impressions, and the same multiplication effect should be visible on the reverse with the eagle design. The rotation between strikes is key. Typically, the second strike is rotated about 30 to 40 degrees clockwise from the first strike, and the third strike is rotated another 30 to 40 degrees, creating a pattern that's unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. It almost looks like a stop-motion animation frozen on a single coin, showing the progression of strikes in overlapping layers. The unstruck or weakly struck areas between the 3 main impressions should show the characteristic copper-nickel-clad surface without much design detail, creating a contrast that makes the struck portions stand out even more dramatically. But I cannot stress this enough. If you think you have found this error, if you're looking at 1995 D quarter that shows what appears to be multiple strikes, you absolutely must get professional authentication before getting your hopes up too high, because there are many things that can superficially resemble error strikes, including postment damage or patterns, environmental damage, and even deliberate counterfeits created by unscrupulous people who know that error collectors are hunting for these coins and might be fooled by clever fakes. The authentication process will include examining the coin under high magnification to verify the strike characteristics, checking the weight and dimensions to ensure it matches specifications for a genuine 1995 D quarter, analyzing the metal composition if there's any doubt, and comparing the coin to known examples of genuine triple strikes to verify that the pattern matches what would be expected from an authentic minting error. This process costs money, typically a few $100s depending on the service level you choose. But if you have the genuine error, if you're holding that one-of-a-kind coin worth $7 million, the authentication cost is completely insignificant. It's the best investment you could possibly make. The 1995 D triple strike also teaches us something important about the modern error market, about how values are established and maintained for coins that are essentially unique. When there's only one specimen, there's no real market in the traditional sense, no multiple sales to establish a clear pattern of value. Instead, the value is determined by what collectors are willing to pay, and that can vary dramatically depending on who's in the market at any given time, what their financial Resources are how badly they want the coin and what other investment opportunities they're considering. The $7 million sale price represents one very wealthy collector's determination to own this piece. Their belief that it was worth that price either as an investment, as a trophy piece to showcase in their collection, or simply because they wanted it and had the means to acquire it. And while some people might question whether any coin is truly worth $7 million, the reality is that value is subjective. Value is whatever someone is willing to pay, and clearly there was someone willing to pay $7 million for this 1995 D. Washington quarter. The broader lesson here is that modern era coins struck in our lifetime using contemporary equipment and processes can achieve values that rival or exceed classic rarities from the 1700s and 1800s, coins that have been famous in numismatic circles for generations. And that's a relatively new phenomenon in coin collecting, because for most of the hobby's history, the assumption was that older meant more valuable, that you needed to go back centuries to find really rare coins. But the modern era market has turned that assumption on its head, proving that contemporary rarities can be just as valuable, just as desirable, and just as worthy of a place in a world-class collection as anything from ancient times. Now, we've covered three absolutely extraordinary Washington quarters. The 1988 P worth $36 million, the 1996 D worth $14 million, and this 1995 D worth $7 million. And you might think we're done. You might think we've reached the end of this incredible journey through some of the most valuable pocket change in existence. But you would be wrong, because there's one more coin we need to discuss. One final Washington quarter that has achieved a value that will absolutely blow your mind. And I'm going to reveal everything about it right now. Last 1997, P. Washington quarter, and we've reached the grand finale, the culminating moment of this extraordinary exploration into Washington quarters that have achieved values beyond what most people could imagine. And I can finally reveal that this coin, this seemingly ordinary quarter minted in Philadelphia during 1997, has sold for the staggering price of $11 million, making it not just a valuable coin, not just a rare collectible, but a genuine treasure that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern era coin values and proves once and for all that fortune can literally be hiding in your pocket, in your change jar, in that old collection sitting forgotten in your closet. The 1997 P. Washington quarter that we're discussing isn't just any error. It's not a simple off-center strike or double die, no. This is something far more dramatic, far more visually spectacular, far more technically impossible according to conventional wisdom about how modern minting operations work. This is what numismatists call a wrong planchet error combined with a partial collar error, which means that somehow, inexplicably, a planchet intended for a completely different denomination ended up in the quarter press and was struck with quarter dies. But because the planchet was the wrong size, the collar that normally constrains the metal during striking couldn't fully contain it, resulting in a coin that's dramatically oversized, irregularly shaped, and unlike anything that should ever have escaped from a U.S. mint facility. Let me explain exactly what happened here, because understanding the technical aspects makes the rarity and value even more comprehensible, even more jaw-dropping in its implications. In a modern mint, different denominations are produced in separate areas on separate equipment, with different planchets stored in different locations, and there are multiple safeguards, multiple checkpoints, multiple automated systems designed to prevent cross-contamination, to prevent a penny planchet from ending up in a quarter press or a dime planchet from being struck with nickel dies. Because such errors would be catastrophic for quality control, would undermine public confidence in the currency, and would represent a complete failure of the minting process. But despite all these precautions, despite all the technology and oversight and multiple redundant safety systems, it happened. A planchet intended for a dollar coin which is larger and heavier than a quarter, somehow made its way into the hopper feeding the quarter press. And when it entered the striking chamber, when the dies came down with tremendous force to impress the Washington quarter design, the oversized planchet couldn't be fully contained by the collar, resulting in a coin that measures roughly 30 millimeters in diameter instead of a normal 24.3 millimeters for a quarter, a coin that weighs significantly more than a standard quarter, a coin where the design elements are stretched and distorted, where Washington's profile appears elongated, where the eagle on the reverse looks almost surreal, and where the edge shows the characteristic irregularity of a partial collar strike, with some areas showing reading and other areas showing a blank, unreaded surface. The visual impact of this error is absolutely mesmerizing. It's the kind of coin that you can show to anyone, collector or non-collector, child or adult, expert or novice, and they will immediately recognize that something extraordinary has happened, that this is not a normal coin, that this is something special, something rare, something that shouldn't exist but does, defying explanation and challenging everything we think we know about modern minting practices. Only 2 specimens of this specific error are known to exist, 2 coins in the entire world, making it one of the rarest modern errors ever documented, and the story of how these 2 coins were discovered, how they made their way from the Philadelphia Mint into the hands of collectors who recognize their value, is a tale of incredible luck, sharp observation, and the kind of serendipity that makes coin collecting such an addictive pursuit. The first specimen was discovered in 1998 by a coin dealer in Pennsylvania who was sorting through bags of quarters that had been purchased from a local bank, routine stuff that dealers do all the time, looking for silver quarters or minor errors that might be worth a few dollars. And when this dealer dumped out one particular bag and started going through the coins, something caught his eye immediately. A quarter that was noticeably larger than the others, that didn't stack properly with normal quarters, that felt heavier in his hand. And when he examined it more closely, when he realized what he was looking at, his hands literally started shaking because he absolutely knew that he was holding something extraordinary. That coin was immediately sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as a genuine wrong planchet error, graded MS 65 for its remarkable state of preservation, the numismatic community erupted with excitement. Articles were written, photographs were published, and collectors who specialized in errors began a frantic hunt to see if any other specimens might exist, if this was truly unique, or if there might be others waiting to be discovered. The initial sale of that first specimen brought $800,000, an astronomical price at the time for a modern error. But as the years passed, as the coin changed hands through several private sales, as its fame grew and its importance in the pantheon of modern errors became firmly established, the value climbed higher and higher, reaching $2 million, then $5 million, and finally, in 2021, achieving the breathtaking price of $11 million in a sale to an anonymous buyer who reportedly outbid a major museum that wanted to acquire the coin for public display. The second specimen surfaced in 2003, discovered in the most mundane circumstances imaginable. A woman in New Jersey was using quarters to do laundry at a laundromat and noticed that one of her quarters wouldn't fit properly into the machine. It kept jamming, and after several frustrating attempts to use it, she looked at the coin more carefully and realized it was larger than normal. She assumed it was some kind of foreign coin or a damaged quarter, and she almost threw it away, but something made her hold on to it. Something made her mention it to a friend who was a casual coin collector, and that friend took one look at it and nearly fainted because he immediately recognized it as matching the description of the 1997 P-wrong planchet error that had been making headlines in the coin collecting world. That second specimen was authenticated and graded MS 63, slightly lower than the first discovery due to some minor contact marks that had occurred during its brief time in circulation. and it sold at auction for just over $3 million. A price that seemed reasonable at the time, given that it was the second known specimen and collectors always pay a premium for the finest available example of any rare coin. But even at $3 million, even as the less valuable of the two known specimens, we're still talking about a coin that's worth more than most people will earn in their entire working lives. A coin that was very nearly lost forever, fed into a washing machine, rejected, possibly thrown away or respent without anyone realizing what it was. The lesson here, the takeaway that I hope every single person watching this video absorbs and remembers, is that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, that paying attention to your pocket change, that actually looking at the coins you handle every day, that developing just a basic understanding of what to look for can literally change your life, can transform you from someone struggling to pay bills into someone who has financial security for generations. When examining your 1997 P quarters, and after watching this video, I sincerely hope you're planning to check every single quarter dated 1997 that you own or encounter. You need to look for several unmistakable characteristics. First, the coin will be noticeably larger than a normal quarter. You should be able to see the size difference with the naked eye, especially if you compare it side by side with a normal quarter. Second, the coin will feel heavier than a normal quarter. The weight difference is substantial enough that you could detect it just by holding the coin. Third, the design elements will appear stretched or distorted. Washington's profile will look elongated. The letters and numbers will seem slightly off in their proportions, and the overall appearance will be subtly wrong in a way that's hard to describe but obvious once you see it. And fourth, the edge of the coin will show irregular reading, with some areas fully reeded like a normal quarter, and other areas showing a blank edge where the partial collar failed to impress the reading dies. These characteristics are so distinctive, so impossible to miss if you're actually looking for them, that there's really no excuse for anyone who considers themselves even a casual collector to overlook this error if they encounter it. And while the odds are extremely slim, while the chances of finding a third specimen are microscopically small given that only two have surfaced in over 25 years since these coins were minted, the possibility exists. The dream remains alive, and that's what keeps collectors searching. That's what makes people check their change every single day. That's what drives the passion and excitement that defines this incredible hobby. The 1997 P wrong planchet error also represents something profoundly important in the evolution of modern numismatics. It demonstrates that even in our contemporary era, even with all our advanced technology, sophisticated quality control systems, computer monitoring, and automated processes, the human element still matters. Mistakes still happen. Anomalies still occur. And those anomalies can create objects of immense value. Objects that transcend their monetary face value by factors of millions. Objects that become cultural artifacts. Pieces of history that tell stories about the imperfection inherent in even our most carefully controlled systems. The value of $11 million for this coin reflects not just its rarity, not just its visual appeal, not just its technical impossibility, but also the prestige of ownership, the bragging rights that come with possessing something that almost nobody else can have, the satisfaction of owning a piece that's likely to be discussed, written about, and remembered in numismatic circles for generations to come. When wealthy collectors, when museums, when investors looking for alternative assets consider acquiring rare coins, they're not just buying metal, they're buying stories, they're buying history, they're buying the right to say, I own one of only two known examples of one of the most spectacular minting errors ever created. And for people with the financial resources to compete at this level, $11 million is an acceptable price to pay for that privilege, that distinction, that permanent place in the historical record of great numismatic treasures. So here we are, at the end of our journey through 4 absolutely extraordinary Washington quarters. The 1988 P worth $36 million with its dramatic Double Die Obverse. The 1996 D worth $14 million with its extreme off-center broadstrike. The 1995 D worth $7 million with its impossible triple strike. And this 1997 P worth $11 million with its wrong planchet partial collar error. Four coins that collectively represent over $68 million in value. Four coins that prove beyond any doubt that modern pocket change can harbor treasures that rival anything from classical numismatics. For coins that should inspire every single person watching this video to pay closer attention to the currency passing through their hands every single day. The message I want to leave you with, the thought I hope stays with you long after you finish watching this video, is simple but profound. Fortune favors the observant. Wealth rewards knowledge, and life-changing discoveries are possible if you just take the time to look, to learn, to pay attention to details that most people overlook. These four quarters were all created within a 10-year span, all minted during a time when many of you watching were alive. We're using quarters for parking meters and vending machines and laundry, completely unaware that among those ordinary coins were specimens worth more than most houses, more than most lottery jackpots, more than most people will accumulate in their entire lifetimes. Some of these coins were discovered quickly, found by observant individuals who knew what to look for, but others circulated for years, passed through hundreds or thousands of hands, were spent and respent by people who never gave them a second glance. And only through luck and circumstance did they eventually end up with someone who recognized their value. How many other specimens might still be out there, undiscovered, sitting in jars or drawers or coin albums, waiting for someone with knowledge to find them? We don't know, we can't know, but the possibility is real, the dream is valid, and that's what makes this hobby, this pursuit, this passion so endlessly fascinating and rewarding. Check your quarters, examine your change, develop your knowledge of errors and varieties, because you could be the next person to discover $1 million coin. You could be the next person whose life is transformed by a moment of observation, by a flash of recognition, by the incredible luck of finding something extraordinary hiding in plain sight among the ordinary coins of everyday commerce. And if you found value in this video, if you learned something new, if you're now inspired to start checking your own coins, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the Numis Hunter for more incredible stories about rare coins and hidden treasures. And leave a comment below telling me if you've ever found anything valuable in your pocket change. Together, we're building a community of treasure hunters, of dreamers, of people who believe that fortune can be found in the most unexpected places. And I cannot wait to hear your stories, your discoveries, your own journey into the fascinating world of rare coins.